professional development, nonprofit leadership, and executive coaching. Wendy has partnered with hundreds of individuals and organizations throughout the U.S., helping frontline C-suite leaders and board members achieve success as individuals and in teams. Let's welcome Wendy.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Can everyone hear me in the back? Yes? Excellent. Okay. It's been noisy back there, so I think it means that we're excited about all the fun ways back there, which is great. So today I'm going to talk about leadership in the age of hybrid teams. So guess what? If your team is fully remote or your team is trying to get back to the office, this still applies to you, right? So the age of hybrid teams refers to the fact that we're in a period of time where work may get done in the office all the time, may get done out of the office, may get done half and half, and that can change at any given time. So I'm going to take a quick poll and see what you think. So I have 4 assumptions up here that I hear a lot when I'm talking to my clients and I'm reading and researching these things. And just as a quick show of hands, which of these is true, false, or would you say it depends? So number 1, remote or hybrid workers and teams are less productive. Who says it's true? No one? Okay. Thank you. That's great. So it's okay to be the only one. It's okay. Anyone have a different answer? Anyone say false? Show of hands. False. Okay, so are the rest of you? Number 1 is false. It is. Who says it's false? Okay, so a few more people. How many of you say it depends? Ah, okay, interesting. So the majority. I'll tell you the answer after we get through all 4, okay? All right. Number 2, culture can thrive even if everyone is working remotely. How many say that's true? Okay, few, good. You guys are getting used to, we're getting the shoulders warmed up. How many say it's false? False, culture can thrive even if everyone's remote. No one thinks it's false. Oh, few, okay, good. I like the bravery. And who would say it depends? Okay, so that's a pretty even split on that, all right? Number 3, remote or hybrid workers tend to be less engaged. Less engaged. Who says that's true? Maybe. You're thinking about it. It's okay to think about it. Okay. How about false? Okay, a few more say it's false, including my wonderful colleague Monica. And what about it depends? Depends. Okay. You know, I love this group. You all, there's a real diversity of opinions here. It's great. Number 4, our last assumption we're going to test here with our highly scientific sample. Most workers want to return to the office full time. Most want to. How many people would say that's true? No one.
It's false or true is what?
Is it true? Do we think most people want to come back full time? No. Interesting. So you would say it's false. All of you would say it's false? Okay, so would anyone say it depends on this one? Oh. So interesting. Okay. Do you want to know the right answers? Okay. So number 1 is false. So remote teams are not necessarily less productive. They're not necessarily less productive. You may find out of 100 people that a few people are. But statistically speaking, that's false. So if you have that assumption, or you've been trying to run a company with that in mind, it's a good time to think about that. Number 2, culture can thrive even if everyone is remote. This is true. So, does it take some work? Yes. Culture always takes work, whether we're all together in the same space or we're not. But it really isn't about distance. I think my own company, Cadabra, is good proof of this. We built a fully remote team with people working in 4 or 5 different states in the US. Some of us have never met, and we're very tight. We're very tight. We have a great culture. We've all worked hard at it. Remote or hybrid workers tend to be less engaged. This one is, it depends. It depends. So some studies and research show us that yes, people are less engaged when they're remote, and some people are more engaged, and some people are the same. It doesn't matter. They don't like that job anyway. It doesn't matter if they're doing it at home or they're doing it in the office. They just don't like it, right? So that's it, depends. And all of you were right, spot on. Number 4 is false. So study after study, survey after survey, even the ones done most recently, and maybe the one coming out next week will be even more so. Most people don't want to come back to the office full time. So guess what? If you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, you're a CEO, and you, in your ideal world, would have everybody back in their office full time, that's not what they want. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? I have some ideas. I want to introduce a new calculus for leadership. And the best way that I can think of to boil this down, I like acronyms, because they help me remember things. And the older I get, the more I like that. So, depth stands for 5 different trends that are going on in the world that are disruptive to the status quo, right? Think about this as a business person, as an investor, as a service provider. All 5 of these things listed there have, are, and will be disruptive to the way we're used to doing things, right? Altogether, that creates what we call VUCA dynamics. Has anyone heard of VUCA before? Is anyone familiar with that term? No? Oh, I'm so excited to introduce you. So VUCA was a term that first came out of the US military. And it's something they came up with to describe this situation where leadership in the battlefield seemed like it was a lot different and needed to be a lot different in the moment than leadership when someone was planning for the battle back at headquarters. Has this ever happened to you? Has anyone ever worked in field services before? I have. So is it a little bit different than working at headquarters? Anyone willing to share? I know you want to. It's way too quiet. Yes?
This just happens to me when I go to Target. I just want one thing and I go in there and 10 items later I'm totally.
There you go. The plan you had going in was different when you actually got into that situation. I love that. It's a great example. So VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So it's saying that things are more dynamic than we might prefer, right? As humans, we kind of like certainty. We kind of want things to stay the same. It makes us comfortable. It makes us feel really safe. So depth and VUCA make us really uncomfortable. And because we're all walking around feeling fairly uncomfortable, what we really need is leadership that is I eat. So I want you to practice something for me. When you wake up tomorrow morning, I want you to say, how will I eat my leadership today? Doesn't that sound weird? So instead of what will I eat for breakfast, it's going to be what will I eat in my leadership today? And I eat stands for inclusive, equity-minded, authentic, and trauma-informed. And then at night, when you go to bed tomorrow night, you're going to say, how did I eat my leadership today? How did I show up as inclusive, equity-minded, authentic, and trauma-informed? Did I do it? Did I not do it? What am I going to do differently tomorrow? That's the secret to leadership in the age of hybrid teams. That's the secret to great leadership now and into the future. So a couple of practical tips. So we've kind of gone really big and meta about this. Now we're going to get down to some brass tacks. So, a couple of things. When we're leading a hybrid team or a fully remote team, we need to ask questions. We need to ask a lot of questions of our team members. It's kind of like doing market research. So, as Eva said, yeah, you know, it's a good idea to really interview your target customer. Think of your team members like your customers. You want to interview them and you want to do it on a regular basis. And the thing you're trying to find out is what? What do you think you're trying to find out? Any ideas?
What they like.
Yes?
What they don't like and what they want you to do.
Yes. Right. What do they like? Any other ideas? Yes.
Get problems they are facing, and how can I offer my help to support some of the problems?
Yes, exactly. So what do they want and what do they need to do their best work for you, right? Isn't that the most important question any leader can ask? And guess what? It changes, right? Remember Deb, VUCA? It changes. So what I say I want and need today might be different 6 months from now. Because guess what? 2 of my kids are going to be back in college. My life is totally different 6 months from now than it is today. And we have to do that without judgment. Has anyone had the experience where you ask an employee, you know, you say, wow, it looks like you're kind of going through a hard time. They say, yeah, I just broke up with my girlfriend and there was this pair of jeans I really wanted at the store, but they were sold out. And then I went to a restaurant and I didn't get my order. And you know, it's just been a terrible week. It's the worst week of my life. And you're thinking to yourself, the little judgy part of you is thinking, seriously? Let me tell you it's hard, right? My wife wants a divorce, my kids hate me, and I need to take out another mortgage on my house. Now try that on for size, right? So all of us are a little bit inclined to think that our hard stuff is much worse than somebody else's hard stuff, and that really is a problem when we're leading people, because they need to hear from us, I see you, I hear what you're saying, thank you for sharing that. That's it. Not, here's how we fix it, not, you think that's hard, I could walk through the snow, you know, both ways, uphill, no. And don't make your plans in a vacuum, right? So don't try to figure out what everyone wants or needs by going into your office and brainstorming by yourself. Because I guarantee you'll miss something important. We can't possibly anticipate everything that all of our team members want and need if you don't ask them. Plan a couple of scenarios, be flexible. So we want to embrace the concept of not just coming up with one perfect plan and working really hard to execute that, but coming up with 3 imperfect plans that are going to get us close enough so that we can pivot quickly. So let me give you an example. Plan number 1 might be, how are we going to create a scenario where our people can come in and work 3 days a week, right? And then work remotely 2 days a week. That's a pretty common plan that a lot of companies are trying to figure out right now. So that's good. But what happens if you start doing that and then your employees come back and say, you know what, it's not really working. I only want to work 2 days a week here, 3 days a week at home. So what's your plan going to be if you need to change the number of days a week that everybody's in the office together? So go ahead and create that plan now so that it's close to ready if you need to pivot quickly. Third plan might be, we're trying to develop the next generation of amazing software, AI, etc. And I think we're gonna need everybody here in the office at Z Park 5 days a week for 3 weeks. We're gonna do a sprint. And then they can be fully remote the next 3 weeks. What does that look like? Right? And you plan that now so that you have flexibility and agility already baked into how you lead. Expect that people, as I mentioned earlier, don't know what they want and that their mind's gonna change. And don't let that frustrate you too much, because people are not trying to be difficult, I assure you. They're trying to figure it out. No one knows. No one really knows right now. And I think that's gonna continue for some period of time. So you've gotta ask more than once. We kind of covered that. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to take a look at 90% of the tasks that you need to have getting done in your business, and you'll probably recognize that they can all be done asynchronously, right? Asynchronously means that two people do not have to be together in the same room, talking to each other and doing it at the same time, right? Only about 10% of the work that most professionals do, technical or otherwise, has to be done face-to-face in a synchronous manner. So I think what happens, or what's tempting for a lot of us as leaders, is we feel pressed, we feel overworked, we feel tired. And so rather than us take the time to make those lists and really put that discipline in to figure that out, we say, everybody just come back to the office. We all just need to work here in the office 4 days a week, because this is just too complicated for me to figure out. And I get it, it is complicated. But it's not gonna serve you well in the current state and into the future. So don't make return to the office the hill you die on. Has anyone heard that expression before? No, never heard that? So it means that, this comes up a lot in parenting. I was really, really careful with my 3 kids to say, is this a rule I really want to put in place? And is this the hill that I'm willing to die on? Meaning that I will send my daughter to timeout 10 nights in a row if that's what it takes. I will miss that party because I have to follow through on this. So that's what I mean. You don't want rigid, full-time work in the office to be a non-negotiable. Because for almost every business, that is not going to be successful or sustainable in the long run. Of course, there are some exceptions, but majority, especially businesses here. Practice proactive inclusion. So what does this mean? So if I'm proactively inclusive, has anyone ever seen that from a leader? Can you help me with what that looks like? I know you're all getting tired. Yes?
Asking the opinion of someone who may not speak up on their own.
Excellent. Yes. Say, hey, Jim, you're awfully quiet today. I see the wheels turning. Is there something that you would like to share with us? We really value your thoughts. Right? So that's one way. Or challenging the leaders on your team. Let's say you have a leadership team and you notice that none of their direct reports ever come in and present to the executive team, right? So you're not really seeing that talent. It's a good thing as a CEO, for example, to say, hey, I'd really like to see that happen. I'd like to see us getting to see some of your team members in action. I'd like to give them that opportunity and get that feedback to them. What sometimes happens is that we look around and we say, I don't have time to do inclusion, or I have a great HR person on staff and that's their job. It's their job to help us figure this out. And leadership going forward and now has to be every leader making inclusion part of their job. Back to IE every morning. How am I going to show up today as inclusive, equity informed, authentic, right, and trauma informed? So it's everybody's job.
I have a question.
Yes.
On that note of proactive inclusion, you gotta take into account, there's two types of people, there's extroverts and introverts. Now,
Yes.
my question is, you know, one of the main purpose of having people in the office is if they literally have to work together, they have to be in a meeting and brainstorming ideas, etc. But it's been my experience that an introverted person isn't gonna speak up anyways, as much anyways. Now, my question is, if there is any research out there, will I'm not worried about extroverts. I'm an extrovert myself and I can deal with that. But will an introvert feel more comfortable speaking up and providing input remotely versus in a room full of people where they tend to be, get nervous? Or is it twice as bad because, well, if they're not going to speak in person, they're not going to speak, remotely anyways through the computer. So I'm curious, is there any? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what we found doing facilitation 100% virtually the last year and a half is that it actually levels the playing field for a lot of people in terms of it makes it safer for some people to give input, or people feel more confident giving input than they ordinarily would in a live in-person setting. And we think that's because there are different methods like polls using the chat function. There are ways other than verbal input that helps facilitate some of that. So that lowers the barrier. And some of it's frankly facilitation skill and design. So sometimes when you have a group of introverts, number one, they may be especially happy to be able to work from home part-time. And number two, they might find those virtual meeting formats and some of the features of platforms like Zoom to be really helpful. And they might feel more empowered. In a live setting, this is where knowing your people is really helpful. So sometimes that call out example that I gave, you might instead as a leader circle back after the meeting and say, pull Jim aside one-on-one and say, I got the sense that you had a lot that you were thinking about. Is there something you want to share with me now? So you can certainly make the decision to not put them on the spot publicly. It's more about you remembering to ask them and invite their feedback. On my team, we certainly have people that have great feedback, but they won't offer it unless I ask them directly. And I say, I really want your advice and feedback, and I do it one-on-one. Otherwise, I'll never get it.
That's all. As a leader, it's a little extra work.
Yes.
And to me, it's annoying. But what about if you offer them, introverts, an opportunity to offer input anonymously versus, is that if you offer an opportunity, okay, just fill in, submit your, and that way they don't get picked out.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to coddle people, but sometimes I have friends that are introverts, and it's like you got to pull words out of you got to pull words out of their mouth. It's annoying as an extrovert.
It can be, yeah. But I love that you're thinking creatively because that tells me that you care, and you're trying to figure out how
I want to get the
crack
job
that.
done.
Yeah, and you want to get the job done. Okay. Do you care and want to get the job done, or?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay,
sure.
good. All right. Well, then take credit for that part too, because that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Good. So I want to make sure that we can get out of here on time, but I do want to just suggest to you, if you'd like some support or ideas about how to lead, you like this kind of stuff, you want to get deeper into it, or you have questions. I think each of you, if you haven't already, you can pick up a copy of my book. It was at the check-in table, and in there we talk about the Learn, Lead, Lift framework. And these are the 3 elements that together create great leadership. So it is a product of my 25 years in HR and OD and L&D, as well as my own, call it my own PhD. I sort of decided in 2018, when I was ready to write the book, that I wanted to find out, what did other people think about leadership who we don't typically ask? What do artists say? What do therapists say? What about first responders? So there's a lot of stories and perspective from people that are not just sitting in a corporate boardroom or on a pitch stage like this. They're leading in lots of different places and spaces. And what came out of all of that soup was leadership is about what you think, mindsets. It's about what you know or know how to do. And it's about how you show up to others, your behaviors. And all three of those things are important, and they all work together. You can't just say it's all about skills, or it's all about behavior, it's all about mindset. They're all important. So just to give you a quick snapshot of what that looks like at the next level down, there are 6 mindsets. Some of them might be familiar to you, like a lot of people have heard of growth mindset, but not many people have heard of the 3T model or identity matters. What's that? Right? Skill sets. 7 skill sets that are foundational and universal in terms of great leadership. This doesn't mean that you might not need to add other skills. Like if you're a CFO, financial acumen might be really important for your effective leadership. But without these 7 skills as a foundation, other people are not going to experience you as a great leader. And finally, behaviors. So FIDA behaviors are focus, integrity, decisiveness, authenticity, and humility. So I can really work hard on how I think. I can work hard to acquire expertise. But at the end of the day, if you don't experience me as humble, my leadership is not going to be as effective. Why? Why? Because if I present myself as somebody who's perfect, you're not going to trust me as much. We just don't. We admire people who we think are really fantastic and perfect. We don't trust them, right? Because they're not like us. We all know that we're a work in progress. Yes?
Quick question. Integrity is a big thing for me.
Good.
And I've had issues with that with people, and especially hiring people or people that join my team. Are there tests where I can say, okay, fill out this multiple choice test and to figure out their integrity? Because after the fact, it's like I ask people, how entrepreneurial are you? And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be on board. And then you bring them on board, you spend all this time and energy, and then they're like, oh, I got to go back and get a job or something like. And I go, I thought you were an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it's such a drain of my time and energy and money.
Yeah.
Are there tests out there to
Yeah. The answer is yes. We have another HR expert in the room. So there are tests. You want to make sure that they are validated for hiring purposes. So we always have to be careful using assessments. You need to make sure that it has that seal of approval, because otherwise it can get you into a lot of trouble. There are also things you can do when you're interviewing. You can ask questions about, tell me about a time when you really had a hard time staying in your integrity, when you really weren't sure what the right thing was to do. Tell me, how did you handle that? And you can kind of start to get a feel for how they think and how they make decisions. And does that align with what you would say is integrity? So, Wendy, do you have some specific, you were nodding, do you have some specific assessments you would recommend that
So
maybe?
there are like a behavior assessment. There are system and you can go through while you interview people, and a compliance with federal and state law. And I know a system like that over 60 years is pretty mature. And the other one is called cognitive assessment. So So through those assessment and the report, you will see the trend, the tendency if the candidate will be a good fit for the position. Yeah.
Great questions, great questions. So what's next? So I have actually an action plan handout that is still up here, so I'm gonna hand that to you, Monica. Which you're welcome to take one or more copies of if you want to share with friends and colleagues. But this is just really an invitation for you to do some reflection and think about what is your biggest challenge right now as a leader, and what is your biggest area of opportunity that you could work on to help with that challenge. And then what might be some small steps you can take to implement that. Resources. So one of the things we also had at the checkout counter was a little slip of paper with a QR code on it. If you click on that QR code, it will take you to a landing page on Cadabra's website. Breeze feels fantastic. And that resource page will prompt you to enter your name and your email. That's it. And you'll be added to, we have a twice monthly newsletter where we go really in depth on current leadership challenges and topics. And it will also unlock for you downloads. So lots of different resources, and they're all free. So they're all tools that align with the learning framework, and will help you kind of put those principles into motion. And lastly, I'm happy to take questions now, and I'm also happy to take questions later. So you can find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram. That's where I'm trying to be more active. You can also email me, give me a call. So let's continue the conversation, because leadership is hard and it's getting harder. So we need to support each other. And in order to get support, we need to reach out. So questions? Yes? Yes. Yes. And the book's very modular, so you can read one chapter at a time and just go right to the key takeaways and then what you can do about it. So if you're not someone who likes to read a bunch of stuff, you just like to skim, it's a great book for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So one thing I observed is for the engaged workers when they work in a remote way, actually they are also spending extra hours compared to when they work on-site. And we also really appreciate this time for this remote work. But we also have some, for instance, like a slow employees, for instance. When they work on-site, they work already lesser hour, and when you do this in a remote way, they find also their way to get away from the job. So for this situation, do you think if we do, for instance, of course, if situation really permits to do this once a time to have people coming to like on-site, either working out together, choose one day coming over, or just like take turns for different group of people coming on-site. Is that really a great way to inspire the workers working the better way from this efficiency perspective, whether there's any research on that?
Yeah, so we know now, and we've actually known for a long time. So if we look at globally distributed teams, for example, one of the best practices has been, and I think should continue, to bring people together face to face if you have the resources to do so, once or twice a year. Once or twice a year, because, and in particular when you first launch a team, so especially if it's a new team, because there is something wired into us as humans that benefits from physical proximity to each other. We do build relationships a little bit faster, so it can happen remotely, but it is slower. And then when you sense some of the engagement is kind of slipping, it can be helpful to bring them in and kind of reinforce that connection. But I think, again, what we don't want to do is make it so it's all or nothing. Yeah, you have to be here all the time, or you have to come in, every month from Thailand to him, right? Like, that's a lot.
Some companies here, the big companies, they provide free food and there's a lot of extra benefits. A lot of big companies, they provide free food and I've worked for some companies like that and it's better food than I could ever eat anywhere else.
No kidding.
But the traffic out here is painful where, you could live 10 miles away from work and spend 2.5 hours on the road every day. Is providing free food, for example, a good enough incentive for employees to come to work, or it's like the people just really don't care as much? I'm curious, on that, because I mean,
Yeah.
some of these companies have amazing catering, but I feel like a lot of people take it for granted. It's like eating at a 4-star restaurant every day.
Yeah, my personal guidance on that would be focus on building a great culture, not on perks. And elements of culture and the things that are stickier than sort of visible perks like food tend to be, people really feel a sense of belonging. They feel that their work is really meaningful. They feel like you care about them as a person, not just as a worker. So those are the things I would lean into before investing in the free